Okay guys, I wanted to come out today and give you a little review that I promised you on this new Mora Garberg full tang knife. I came out here to an area where I'd set up a camp before I left for Las Vegas. I left it up while I was gone, and of course we had a snowstorm. No detriment to the AquaQuest tarp, that Defender tarp, or the Hennessy hammock. So I've got an area down here that's cleared out. I'm going to start a small fire with this Garberg knife from Mora. While I discuss the knife with you, I'm also going to put some video footage at the end of this video on the demonstration I did at SHOT Show of the multifunctional or multi-mount sheath. That is one option that comes with this knife as well. Because that sheath is not fully developed yet, I do not have it here at the school to give you a review, so I did it at SHOT, and I'll just talk more with you about the knife here today. So let's talk real quick about fires in weather like this. I mean, it's no big chore to start a fire when you've got snowy conditions like this. All you have to do is find the wood that's not under the snow. There's plenty of branches sticking up that have fallen from the trees. A lot of people call that squaw wood, just wood that you can walk by, pick up. And what I look for is, when I pick up a piece of wood, I want it to snap. If it snaps, I know it's nice and dry. If it doesn't snap, it's not going to be dry. Now, if you can't find enough of that type of wood, you should be able to find enough of that type of wood to at least dry out some more marginal sources. Maybe you had a pile of wood by your shelter and it got snowed on overnight. You've got a big pile of snow on top of your firewood for the next day because you failed to protect it correctly before you went to bed. Well, it's not that big a deal if you can find enough dry wood to dry that out. And then you need a good tinder source that's going to give you longevity in damp conditions, like fatwood. Fatwood is a very, very good choice for that because it's fairly waterproof. It'll burn even if it's damp, and it burns for a long time. It burns very hot because of that pine sap that is impregnated into the wood within this fatwood. And they call it fatwood because it's impregnated with pine sap. It usually comes from areas like stumps in the tree, or lower areas of the tree, or areas where branches grow out of the tree. The sap collects in those areas, and that's called fatwood or fat lighter wood, depending on where you're from, or lighter wood. But you can buy this stuff commercially, or you can go find it yourself. But either way, I would carry, a dozen sticks of this in my kit all the time, especially in a wintertime environment, because you can light this up very readily with the ferrocerium rod. And a cigarette lighter, a Bic especially, is always going to be my first choice for starting fires. But that Bic lighter is also a resource that you want to somewhat conserve. And if you can start a fire in conditions that's not too windy like it is right now, and it's not raining, it's not snowing, it's fairly dry, you've just got snow on the ground, and I can use a ferrocerium rod to start my fire with the processing of this fatwood, then I can conserve the resource of that lighter for another time. And it's good to practice conserving resources even if you're just camping. And it's not survival, because you never know when it could turn into that. Emergencies do happen to people all the time. And being prepared and practicing those methodologies all the time, like conservation of resources, is important. And I think that's one of the things that we can talk about when we talk about this new Garberg knife from Mora. Let's get started. Now, I will always try to put something down on the ground to put my knees on if I'm going to get down here and work on fire, because I don't want to get my clothing wet or dirty if I can help it, because that's conservation of that resource. Keeping that clothing clean will allow it to do its job and insulate me as well as breathe. So that's important. Now, we've got an area of the ground here that's damp that we've wiped snow away from. So we'll want to put some sticks on the ground, if we can, just as a little bit of a base. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just be a few sticks. It's going to keep your fire from being directly on that ground and suffering from conduction. Now, one of the things that I found with this new Mora knife, it is stainless steel. It's a 14C 28N stainless. And everybody knows I'm a big fan of carbon and a pretty downer when it comes to stainless. Really, you have merits and demerits for stainless steel. This Sandvik stainless steel maintains an edge for a long period of time. It's a little harder to sharpen than carbon steel, but it will maintain that edge longer over time. Because of that, I also feel that it probably maintains this 90-degree spine a little better than some other knives might, that were softer of carbon steel, that tend to roll over when you're using them a lot in a spoke shaving or tinder processing or ferro rod scraping type motion. So that, I believe, is probably an advantage to the fact that this knife is made of stainless. So I'll just scrape down some of this fat wood, just like this. And that is the advantage of having that 90-degree spine, is that you can easily process those materials and conserve the resource of that edge. And that resource is one of your most important resources that you can have for longevity's sake in a wilderness scenario, because you don't want to have to resharpen it. So anything that you can do to conserve that edge, whether that be not using it or using some type of backup to it if you can. So being able to use that spine to be able to process that material gives me big advantage with this blade. Now, any 90-degree spine will do that. You've seen me do that lots and lots of times with my high carbon steel knives, of course. But there is something to be said for the fact that stainless steel will maintain that edge and is a more durable material over time when it comes to resource management in an emergency scenario. And stainless steel obviously has the ability to maintain an edge longer. And it also is not going to rust, so you're not going to have to maintain it as much. So those are a couple advantages to this knife. The disadvantage over this and carbon steel is that carbon steel would be easier to sharpen, and carbon steel would give you the ability, if it was a hard enough Rockwell on the spine, to strike sparks from the back of the blade with a rock in a dire emergency. You should always carry 3 forms of fire starting with you. Most of the time I recommend a lighter, a ferrocerium rod, and a magnifying glass. So that would be your 4th and last backup in a survival scenario. And if I had to choose between having the ability to strike sparks with a rock and a full tang, I would choose the full tang every time, even if that knife were stainless steel. So once I get that tinder processed, I want to make sure I've got that good 90-degree spine. That's going to give me lots and lots of sparks. So that I then have the ability to just put other pieces of fat wood into my fire, even if that's only a couple of slivers. To help it to burn a little bit longer, so that marginal material has time to catch fire. If I kind of build that in Lincoln log fashion, that's going to put plenty of airflow into that firelay. And I can save the rest of this material for the next fire and begin to put other sticks into my firelay. That may be less optimal because they had some snow or were damp. And I'm not trying to build a large fire right now, a heating type fire. I don't need that. I'm plenty warm. I'm just trying to get a small fire going to be able to cook food on or heat up water. This is not an emergency fire by any means, but it shows you that you can use less than optimal material in wet weather. Some of this material still has snow on it actually. But because I have that fat wood, it will help it to burn long enough to get this larger material on fire. And As long as I let plenty of oxygen into the base of this fire, that will work out just fine for me, even if I have some snow on some of this material. And now I'm just building around the outside, letting the flames rise up, always going up as much as I can to let the heat rise. And then I'm just going to let the fire breathe. If it starts smoking like this, I want to stop adding fuel until the flames rise above the current level of fuel. Okay guys, so let's have a chat about this Mora Garberg knife. Obviously, first of all, I want to say one thing. Mora Knives is not paying me to endorse this product. I am not making a single dime for endorsing this product. I'm endorsing this product because I believe in Mora knives. I've carried Mora knives for a long, long time. Anyone who has been watching my videos from the beginning saw that I used to carry a Mora knife around my neck every day and on my EDC. And I have carried lots of Mora knives over the years, but I have always preferred the full Tang knife to be the knife on my hip. But I've used Mora's carving tools. I still use Mora's carving tools to this day for wood carving, spoon making, bowl making, and things of that nature. When Mora came out with a full Tang knife and asked me if I'd be interested in testing the prototype, and this one says prototype right on the blade, I said, well, of course I would. Absolutely. Even if it's made out of stainless steel, I want to test it. I want to see how good this knife is, because I did some rigorous testing of Mora's Pathfinder version of their black knife, and I've done rigorous testing over the years of the Bushcraft Black since it came out. I recommend the Bushcraft Black to my students when they come to my classes. So it's only fitting that I would test a full Tang knife like this that came out by Mora as well, and give it a fair examination, good and bad. And of course, the first thing I said was, you know, why is this thing stainless and not carbon? Well, I'm going to give you the inside scoop on some of this stuff on this video. First of all, Mora's process is set up around stainless steel. They've been making Sandvik stainless, and this one is, again, 14C 28N Sandvik stainless. And their processes are really set up around hardening and tempering stainless steel. They're not set up to deal much with carbon steel. They do have the carbon steel Bushcraft Black. But the Bushcraft Black, because it's not full Tang, does not have the warpage issues that you would have with a longer piece of metal to make a full Tang knife. So it's going to take some development on their part in their process to be able to create something in full Tang that's high carbon. So with that said, don't think that they're not listening and that they don't know that they probably want to make something in high carbon. But right now, stainless is their choice for several reasons. And one of those reasons is process, but another reason is they have a long history of using stainless steel and laminated stainless steels to make very high quality knives, both kitchen knives and outdoor knives. And I've seen lots and lots of Mora knives that were years and years old that were still as good as the day they were bought. And they do make lots of smaller high carbon knives, but again, they're not full Tang. And there's a difference in that process and the heat treat and tempering of that steel than there is in the stainless steel, without getting too overcomplicated with this video. So my first knock on this knife would have been that it was stainless steel. But looking at it from a practicality standpoint, is this something that I would say is a survival knife? Well, it's not 5 inches long, so it doesn't meet that criteria. It's not high carbon steel, so it doesn't meet that criteria. It meets all the other criteria of what I consider a good survival type knife, but it's a great backup knife to the full Tang high carbon knife on my hip for the time being, until Mora comes out with a full Tang high carbon steel knife. Do I think this is a good knife and worth carrying? I absolutely do. And I would carry this knife in my backpack or as a secondary every day, any day, even though it's stainless steel, because Stainless steel does have inherent properties that make it advantageous. It takes less care and maintenance because it doesn't rust as bad. It holds an edge longer and is more durable in the long run than carbon steel. So it does have some advantages with edge retention, both from a spine standpoint and from a blade standpoint, if you're using this knife to do a lot of skinning and game cleaning and food processing tasks. So it does have lots and lots of advantages, and then being full tang only lends it to more durability without the reduction of steel, and never compromising that blade if you had to, for some reason, baton this knife in an emergency. And again, I say had to. Not something that you would do every single day with any knife, batoning. Something that you would do in an emergency if you didn't have an axe or you didn't have a saw. So I tested this knife pretty thoroughly. I've had this thing for about 2.5, 3 months. And I helped them release it at SHOT Show. Again, not because I was paid, but because I like Mora knives. I have a very good friend, more than one very good friend at Mora Knives now, but I met one of the gentlemen that works at Mora Knives, and he and I became very good friends. And I've helped them, and I am still continuing to help them with some of their process or design developments, I should say, not process, but more design characteristics of their future knife projects. And they do have some really nice knives coming down the pike very, very soon. So there are disadvantages to stainless steel. There are advantages to stainless steel. Is Dave saying, hey, this is the greatest knife since sliced bread and you should go out and buy this knife right now? It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this knife has merits, especially in certain environments, especially for certain tasks. And I would carry this knife, absolutely, without hesitation. It's a Mora. That's a no-brainer. It's going to be a quality knife with good edge retention and a very good Scandinavian grind. This one happens to be 27 degrees. So now let's cut to the chase and go to talking about price, because that's the hugest thing I've seen, or the biggest thing I've seen scuttlebutt wise on the internet, is how can a Mora knife cost $100? Okay, well, first of all, let's back the train up for a minute and say that Mora never made a $10 or $13 or $20 knife, and the first knife you ever saw by Mora was this full tang knife, and it was $100. You wouldn't bat an eye at paying $100 for this knife. I know you wouldn't. You can be honest with yourself and look inside yourself and look in the mirror and say, you're right, Dave, I would, because you would. It's no different than any other full tang custom knife on the market or mass-produced knife on the market from any other company. It's made from good quality stainless steel with a good process with a long-standing company, and $100 is not that expensive for this type of knife. Most people would pay $100 for a quality knife. Are you going to have to pay $100 for this knife? Probably not, unless you buy it with the most hopped up options available for this knife. And it comes in two options right now. One of them will be with a leather sheath, which of course is going to bump the price up of the knife. And I think the MSRP, which is completely different than what the knife will actually sell for, the MSRP is $109 with a leather sheath. The MSRP for the multi-mount sheath, which I'll put some footage on video at the end of this video about, is $100, $99.95, something like that. Again, MSRP is almost never what a knife sells for. It's the recommended price to get the maximum markup from the dealer to the reseller. What they decide to mark the knife up, other than if there's MAP pricing involved, and sometimes there is on many things, especially higher end items, there's MAP pricing, or a set number that you can't go below. But I would fully expect to see this knife coming in at less than $100 very quickly after it's released. So backing the truck up again, would I pay less than $100 for this knife? I absolutely would. I'd pay $100 for it, so I know I'd pay less. You've got to realize that even though Mora has a reputation for high quality knives at low cost, their process allows them to do that. But this is a more complicated process for them than a normal partial tang knife. It has a revolutionary handle material, Crichton handle material, that's almost indestructible. I have not put a dent or a ding in this handle since I had it, and it does give you a nice solid grip. It's not rubber, but it's rubberized feeling, and it is not soft rubber but hard rubber, but it gives you a good grip, and I like that. So that handle material is more expensive than their norm. The steel is a little more expensive than their norm, and there's a little more of it. The process is longer to create this knife than a normal process. And all of those things add to the cost to produce a knife, which in turn add to the selling price of the knife. So I think for people to say, oh, I'd never pay $100 for a Mora knife, a lot of people are lying to themselves, because they would, and they will. But you're probably not going to have to. It'll probably come in at less than $100. I have almost no doubt about that, especially in other options that could come down the pike, maybe just a bare plastic sheath and the blade itself, and not the fancy multi-mount or the leather. And you could always buy an aftermarket or make a leather sheath in this knife if you chose to do so. But my opinion, for what it's worth to anybody out there, is that this knife has definitely got enough going for it. It's enough of a quality blade, and the construction is built durable enough that this knife is definitely worth whatever Mora decides to put on it for an MSRP, and whatever someone decides to sell it for. This knife is worth that. It's worth it to me. Now, if you're asking me, would I ditch all of my carbon steel knives for stainless steel now? And oh, Dave doesn't like stainless, but now he all of a sudden does. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this knife has merit. I'm saying stainless steel has merit. I'm saying that stainless steel has a lot of advantages over carbon steel, but yet carbon steel has advantages over stainless as well, depending on the environment, depending on the situation, and depending on the use of that blade. Everything is not about survival, survival, survival. It's about smoothing it, not roughing it, using the proper equipment and the proper tool for the proper job in the proper environment. And I believe that this knife has its place. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. I hope you enjoyed just a quick little talk and review of the Mora Garberg full tang knife. Okay, guys, so what I want to do real quick while I'm at SHOT Show is I want to discuss this new modular sheath system for the Mora full tang knife. And the reason I'm doing it at SHOT is because while I've had the knife for a few months now, testing the knife, the sheath has not been fully developed yet and not released yet to the public. So I'm not going to have the sheath back at the Pathfinder school to do this video. So I want to show you this today. Now zoom down on it. Okay, so what you've got is you've got several component parts here that make up this modular sheathing system. You've got the sheath itself, which is a plastic sheath that the knife locks into, and it's ambidextrous to go left or right-handed, either way. You have a belt loop that will snap onto that sheath so that you can carry the knife as a belt carry in the woods. It also comes with a mounting bracket that will give you a permanent mount if you choose to do that to a boat, a canoe, a kayak, an ATV, whatever the case may be. And it comes with two Velcro straps as well with slots in it so that you can put this on your backpack or on your molly gear. And the way this works is you would drop the knife into the sheath, and it has a positive locking system here and an overflap to make that knife completely secure, and then Velcro's on. So if you permanently bolt this to something, it's mounted there very much like a fire extinguisher type mount. You would undo this, and you can then pull the knife completely out if you want to with the retention strap still on it, or you can just pull it completely out and put it into the belt strap system. So you have several ways that you can carry this knife in this modular sheathing system that make it usable for everything from the tactical market all the way through the bushcraft market.